this Z-Files on the Road is down here on Main Street in historic downtown Crestview at a location now called Main Street Eats. And we're talking to a guy, we're going to talk about the business side of your life, Nathan Boyles. And this is one of your multiple businesses. You have grown your business activity in the community in downtown Crestview.
Yeah, I have a love for downtown, and so it seems like I can't get away. So every new idea we come up with somehow finds a way to have a home in downtown Crestview.
So what do we have here? This has been a vacant lot for a long time, I think. In the history in the Forkland, there were several different businesses. There was a pharmacy here one time with like a soda fountain, I think, way back when. I think we even used this lot one time to do our skillet toss, the first time we did the skillet toss.
That's right. We bought it, I think, about 5 years ago. At the time, it was a vacant lot. It had been a vacant lot for longer than a decade, as far as I understand. There had been a building there that had burnt down some number of years ago. Basically, it had been an unproductive, unmaintained eyesore in the center of downtown Crestview. And so we bought the lot, and within a few years, we had this idea for a food courtyard project. And frankly, it was born out of a visit down to Seaside with all of the Airstreams that line 30A down there. And I thought, if that's good enough for Seaside, that should be good enough for downtown Crestview, and that was the original impetus for the project.
And of course, I know I've visited towns, and you have, where units like this are there. When I went up to visit Yale to see where Dr. Peden had been, when he said, "Gosh, there's a building in Crestview looks just like this Graduate School of Pharmacy." When I was there shooting a news story a couple of weeks after that, I just happened to have a trip going to Connecticut at that time, and all these things began rolling in about 10 o'clock, and every kind of food you could imagine was on a food truck there for the Yale students and faculty. Yeah. And when it was all done at 1:30, they all packed up and it was gone. Yep. But I mean, the idea of having the food court is something not brand new in America.
That's right. And what we did here was, I know a lot of bricks and mortars business owners, myself included, it can be skeptical when you have kind of what's viewed as a fly-by-night that kind of comes in and comes out and doesn't have to invest in the community. And so what we did here is we kind of merged those two models together. By the time we finished developing the site, and we're still going on it, but we've got more invested in the infrastructure on the site than we would have had if we just simply built a basic building on the site. And so we have that bricks and mortar investment. And so this is not, this is not your mobile food truck in the traditional sense. This really is a permanent bricks and mortar site that's going to contribute to the tax base and contribute to the economy here in Crestview.
And you do have one operation already operating down here.
So we have 3 sites. One is currently operating. That's Megan's Sunshine Cafe. It's an all-vegetarian offering, great food, and I encourage folks to come visit Megan. And then we've got the second unit, which is the Airstream right behind us, which has been recently leased. It's going to be Tony and Manolo's, and that's going to be kind of Key West Cuban-inspired fare. Okay. And they should be open, we hope, in the next 30 to 45 days.
Okay. And then the other part of it is what?
So we've got one site. We've kind of been going slowly. What we want to make sure is that we have a good mix of tenants and that they're all complementary to one another. Okay. And frankly, that it's new offerings that you can't already get in Crestview. And so we'll be soliciting and trying to find that right tenant to fill that third spot here in the next few months.
And of course, you have tables for folks to sit at, and I gather you have restrooms available.
We do. We built, there's a set of bathrooms that were built. We do all of our underground plumbing and utilities on the site. Obviously, nice pavering, good landscaping and lighting to give a nice, comfortable place to come to downtown.
But now that sign that you saw at the beginning, folks, up here on the wall, became a bit of a challenge of you're getting customer service out of the, I guess basically the growth management department in that area, building permits and licensing through the City of Crestview.
It did become a bit of a frustration point for me. And so what happened was our application was simply denied. It was flatly denied for the sign. And the basis given within the letter of denial was that it was an off-site sign. An off-site sign under the code is a billboard. And I think any person that's viewing this, or any reasonable person, would not have considered that an off-site sign. And so if there was a question about why the sign was affixed to the wall, that would have been a great thing to call and ask, and we probably could have worked through that. Instead, what I got was just a flat permit denial based upon a vague notion of being an off-site signage. And I'm a lawyer, and I can be pretty aggressive at times, and so I don't mind pushing through challenges. But what I've learned, especially working with other merchants downtown, is that if you're not a lawyer, if your personality is not quite as aggressive as mine, you can frequently take a no and you go go on with life, and so it can be a discouragement for folks that are less aggressive than I am, and that's where I really hit my frustration point with the level. You know, we started a merchants group downtown, and that was the feedback I heard from a lot of them, is that they get these stumbling blocks that are placed in front of them to go into small business, and that can really, those add up to be a negative inducement to encouraging small business.
Well, of course, you've also had dealings with people in the same kind of work in another county near here. So what is the difference between the way the customer service you got in the city of Crestview from what you're getting over in Walton County?
Well, and I want to be clear first, you know, there are lots of good people at City Hall. There are lots of good people within city government. You know, the Public Works Department in the city of Crestview is second to none. I love working with them. And so I think there's an opportunity for tweaks to be made. And you know, one of the correlations I was drawing is I was recently permitting a project over in Walton County, and it had challenges. There was some bases that the permitting authorities didn't feel they could approve it. And the first thing that I got was a phone call. And they said, "Hey, Mr. Boyles, these are this is the issue that we've identified, and we're not quite sure how to deal with this. As of now, it won't allow us to approve this project. Can we talk about it? Is there additional information you can provide us so that we can get to the right answer?" And I appreciated that. They didn't say yes to me. In fact, they probably gave me the right answer, which is no, based upon the code that it's written, but they engaged in a process of working through it to help me understand the process. And I think if we can do that, if any local government can do that for the average person, for the average person, you know, in this area is a great example of military, right? We have folks who decide to retire here from the military. They're relatively young, and they go look at starting a business, and they may not have a lot of experience in the business world, and so these little stumbling blocks can end up adding up to keeping that business from ultimately opening its doors.
And I have a friend who runs a radio station over in Milton, and he said maybe it's a tie. Again, what the business person comes away with, well, they don't really want our business. Now, we know that the city council members do. We know the mayor does, the city clerk's office, the people who are glad to have these tax-paying businesses down here and employing people. But then somewhere, some people think, well, government shouldn't be run like a business. Well, why not?
Right. There's a balance, and you know, I heard this from one of the officials I was dealing with on this issue. Well, I have a code and my job is to enforce it. And I thought, that's right. At its very basic level, that's correct. But it doesn't mean that you can't do that in a way that helps the person in front of you to get to yes. Doesn't mean you'll always get to yes, but if you'll invest that extra effort in trying to help them find a way, I think that will go a long way towards encouraging small business. If you're Walmart or Publix, you've got experts, you've got lawyers, you've got all of the resources that you need to be successful in any location, and this isn't a problem. Really, this is a problem for the small town folks, and in particular for me, my interest being downtown Crestview, for the types of businesses that are likely to locate in our downtown district.
So then you did find a solution finally, as you worked out a deed type of a thing with the property owner of that other building, so that you would requalify. Is that what you had to do? It
was already in place. We had the right to use that shared party wall. That goes back several years. We're the ones that paint it and maintain it. We've got a good relationship with our neighbor. And here was my point. We have one wall for both of our facilities. And if the city's going to take a strict interpretation that one or the other of us has to be off-site, that means one or the other of us can't utilize that to advertise our building or our businesses, which are both on-site. And to me, that would just be an absurd result of trying to strictly enforce a code without actually understanding the circumstances that are in play. There's no reason at all that this property and the building next door can't put signage that is in accordance with code up to advertise our businesses, and that will help us be successful. To me, that was such a simple concept that if you look, I can't imagine anyone that would look at that sign and say, well, that's off-site signage. It's just not.
It's looking right down on what you're doing.
That's right. That's right.
Well, you know, we're recording this on a Thursday morning, and there's already some moisture coming into our town from a little storm out there in the Gulf of Mexico. So we decided to come inside to your offices here in your conference room, Nathan. So basically, you probably face what other people have faced in trying to do some business for the improvement for something in downtown, and not being able to really get friendly, good, easy service from whoever the staff people are you have to deal with.
Well, and I think there's always going to be challenges between government and business, and there are regulations that have to be met and requirements that have to be checked off. I think that one of the challenges in Crestview is that, quite frankly, we have an antiquated charter. You know, our city's been around a long time. It's celebrated its 100th anniversary, its 100th birthday. And so we have a charter that quite literally predates the notion of sunshine law in the state of Florida. So when our charter was formed, the assumption was that the city council members would work together on a regular basis to solve problems and to run the city on a day-to-day basis. And they can't do that today because of the sunshine law. And we can debate the merits of the sunshine law, but it doesn't matter. It is what it is. And so I've come to believe that, you know, one of the best ways to kind of start to move forward is to bring our charter up to be more modern. And one of the challenges that our staff has at City Hall is that they can sometimes, I think, suffer from a lack of direction. It's not that we don't have good people that want to do good things, it's that it's difficult to have consistent direction. Think about it. There is only someone in charge at City Hall every other week from about 6 in the evening till whenever the city council meeting concludes. The rest of the time, there is no single figure who is responsible for everything that goes on within city government. For the county, as an example, most counties, in fact, you have an administrator, and the day-to-day administration of the county is the responsibility of that administrator. And if they don't do well, they're held accountable to the county commission. Now, that's just one structure. I actually have been looking at the new structure over in the city of Pensacola just at a distance, and I have to tell you, it appears to be working very well over there. And several years ago, they went to what's called a strong mayor form of government. And so it provides a single person who's responsible to the voters directly and who's responsible for the day-to-day operations of that city to see to it that it runs efficiently. And by all metrics, economics and otherwise, the city of Pensacola is on fire. And they're doing very, very well. And I see no reason that we can't get to that place here, but it's going to require some modernization.
And they have a fellow over there and his wife that we met, the fellow here a week or two ago, Mr. Studer, who has really pumped a bunch of energy into that downtown area as well. And of course, the mayor's looking after the whole city, including the downtown area.
That's right. And look, it's not fair to compare ourselves directly to Pensacola. We're on a different scale, but we have many of the same, you know, basic core advantages that the city of Pensacola has, including location on I-10. We're convenient to a tourism corridor. Quite frankly, our tourism market in Okaloosa County is far stronger than it is in Escambia County. And so many of those tourists pass right through or around the city of Crestview. And so there's an opportunity to tap into that. And we want to be able to do that in a way that both respects where we've come from. We want to preserve our community feel, because we really do have a good community here, but we also want to make sure that we are keeping an eye towards the future. And I think a better way to do that would be through a more modern charter. One of the things I think has to happen, quite frankly, is we've got to be willing to pay our officials. And that's one of the challenges in the city of Crestview. You know, I'm a county commissioner in Okaloosa County. I make $68,000 a year for what is constitutionally defined as a part-time job. Now, most of us treat it as a full-time job, but constitutionally it's considered a part-time job. A city council member in the city of Crestview, I think they make $6,000 a year. And so they're effectively volunteering their time. And that's good and that's appreciated, but there's an argument to make as a business person. If I want my employee to do well, you know, the more I pay them, the higher my expectations are from them. I'm a firm believer in hire good, competent people, pay them well, and then expect them to do a good job. And if they don't, cut them loose and move on. I think the city could adopt a similar model, both with your city council and with your mayor position, all of your elected positions, where they're well compensated, reasonably well compensated, that will encourage good talent to come forward and be competitive in those races, and then expect them to be good leaders. And when they're not, at the next election cycle, you have every justification for moving them out and moving someone else in.
Now, I do know that when the gentleman who was elected mayor, and I think maybe he's in his second term now over there, maybe it was wisely, hired somebody who had been an administrator, like a manager type person, and put that person to work doing many of those tasks, and he's out there doing, you might say, the public relations side the meet and greet and going out of town, recruiting businesses and jobs for Pensacola.
That's right. And there are, and that can be controlled by charter, and that's some of the, the details that you can get into once you get to that point of saying we need to have this discussion. And it's important to note we've had that discussion over the last few years in the city of Crestview. And in fact, I believe there was a charter amendment that almost made it to the ballot and then got pulled because of some technical issues with regard to notice. Right. And this is a sensitive issue for me because I'm a county commissioner, and I'm certainly not going to tell the city what to do. But I think that as a business owner, as a property owner, as a taxpayer within the city, I do think this is something that we could collectively look at and see if it's time to try and make another effort at getting those issues corrected. It's not that we had a bad charter when it was written, it's that it was written a long time ago, and the laws have changed, the world has changed, and so it's just a different game. Those city council members cannot talk to one another about city business except at a city meeting, and there is no one in charge the rest of the time. Our mayor is in charge of the fire department and the police department, and that's good, but he has no control over any of the administrative functions within the city outside of fire and police. And so it creates a very disconnected management structure.
Right. What Mayor Cato has done is some time back he began bringing those department heads, at least they do meet and talk and share and got to know more about what they're all doing. There was a period of time when one department really didn't pay any attention to the other departments except that they saw them at a meeting. Now that they have that part, and that's kind of like a voluntary thing that's been happening. It's nothing the charter allows. But if you look at our charter, and I looked at it on the website yesterday, a whole lot of references, replaced by such and such state law, replaced by such and such state law. Yes. So a charter that was way back when, the state laws have superseded and replaced many of the things that the charter says they can do anyway.
That's right.
Like a physician. City position. That's right.
It was adopted in the early 1900s, and so it's just a different world out there today. And so there are a lot of reasons why it might be time to revisit that. I think if we were to go through that process, there is the potential that you would have greater coordination. And so if you wanted to develop a consistent tone across all departments, it would be easier to do that with an administrator or a strong mayor that carried that tone and was responsible for ensuring that every staff member carried that tone. And again, that's, for me, that would be, how do we help these entrepreneurs, these business owners, our citizens, how do we help them get to yes? Doesn't mean we'll always get there, but that we want to try and help them find a solution rather than taking the approach of, I have a code and my job is to enforce it.
Well, we've got a $30+ million a year business. In essence, that's what the city's total revenue and expenditures are. And many people will say, if you got a business that big, you need management.
Absolutely. Think about that. Can you imagine a business in the world that is paying $6,000 a year, a $30 million business paying $6,000 a year to the folks at the top, and then expecting them to perform well? It just we say we want government to run like a business. That would not work in the business world. And again, it's not to say that our city council members aren't doing the best they can within the system they have, but I just want to be sure that the best possible talent is coming forward. Being a public official is a difficult thing to do. You suffer endless scrutiny. Every year you have to publicly disclose the intimate details of your financial life to the world at large. And so we have city officials who are compelled to do just that and are compensated $6,000 a year for the privilege. And it is a lot of work. Again, it's hard to expect excellence when we don't pay for excellence. And so I say let's pay for it, and then let's expect it.
Let's see if the voters will turn out with more than 10% of the city voters to vote on something.
Well, look, you're always going to have citizens who are not going to be engaged in the process. I take that, at least in part, as citizens who say, I have a government in place and I expect them to do their job. And so I don't take that as an excuse not to be accountable to those folks. I almost take that as a reverse mandate saying to me, I'm being trusted and being expected to perform well.
Let's go back and talk a little bit now again about businesses downtown, and like your new business with your food court. The CRA, which is also the council members with 2 citizen members on the CRA, now has engaged and contracted with the Peterman Agency to do a lot of little detail work that one person there, and having been on the Main Street Board and worked with helping select the last 2 CRA Main Street directors and on the committee that did, there's a lot more to be done than one person can do. In the early days, The program kind of ran as a means to have the Main Street and the CRA program work together to get enough points on those applications for the first big 3 grants they got, which altogether they got over $3 million in grants that did the sidewalks, the streets, and things like that. Because now we're to the point where the streets need some reworking done. Then we know that we're all going to be waiting for that big new building to be opened up there on the north end of Main Street. But you have started the impetus to put together with some other local business owners a business group, which really has a slightly different function, where Main Street has got 4 facets of what it should do. This business group really wants to get people buying, shopping, or knowing that these businesses are here. So where do you think you're going with that?
Well, I think we're making progress, and it's important to note, I take responsibility as a business owner for the success of my business. And I think it's important for other business owners to do the same. And I'll say very frankly, that's not always the case. When a business opens and it fails, it's easy to point at, a lot of reasons why you weren't successful externally. And I think it's also important to make sure you're looking internally to see if there are reasons that you weren't successful. And so my thought was, as a collective group of business owners downtown, we have our own responsibility. If our local government is not being as responsive as we think it should, it's our job to step forward and say that. And if we're just, if we just grouse about it on Facebook, that we're not going to actually move towards any type of resolution. And so the idea has been to get us together and to come up with, a list of the things that, to share information amongst ourselves as to how we can do better apart from government as private sector, but then also to say, how can we partner with the city and with local government to make sure that we are using the resource that the CRA is as effectively as possible. And it's not fair to the city to expect them to, do exactly the right thing with those dollars in the downtown district if we're not giving our input. And you go to those CRA meetings and frequently there's nobody in the audience. And so it's hard to fault the city for, if they go in the wrong direction when we're not there at the table helping to give our input. Doesn't mean they're always going to do what we say, but my goodness, we can't hold them accountable if we're not being accountable to being involved in that process.
Well, of course, the same thing on small crowds has been the habit at the most recent budget hearings. The budget went boom, boom, everything was well prepared and well done. The department heads all were in agreement as they met together, but then the last time we had a budget workshop, it was firemen, policemen, and a couple of us from the news media, and that was it.
Right. Well, right. Right. And, one way to look at that is that, it appears that the city is doing a good job with expenditures. Another way to look at that is they didn't raise taxes. And typically what's going to bring folks out is if you raise taxes. Unfortunately, I think, and this goes for the county as well, as long as you're not raising taxes, you can probably be spending those dollars pretty poorly, and there's not going to be a whole lot of folks that turn out to fuss about it. It's when you decide to take more from them that they're going to show up and fuss about it. But again, one line of thought is, that means we're simply expected to do well, and that they don't think they should have to babysit us through the process of doing well.
And on a quick personal note as we wrap up, I haven't seen a newsletter from you. I suspect somebody's been interfering with some of your sleep habits pattern the last month or so.
It has. And yeah, so we have Quinn Amelia Boyles was born 1 month ago yesterday. Beautiful baby girl. We're happy to have her, and she has effectively wrecked my life. And so we are struggling to get back on a schedule. My wife and I are both schedule people, and so we take alternating shifts. I'll note that last night was my on-duty shift. Okay. And Quinn is still eating at least 3 times a night, and sometimes that's an hour or 2 of a process. So I probably had about 4 hours of sleep last night, and not all at one time. But we're happy to have her. She's a beautiful baby, and I hope to get back on track with the newsletters very soon.
And I understand, but sometime soon we can talk about some more things downtown and building structures. You're going to make things happen and look good. Yeah,
again, Crystal and I we love downtown Crestview. And so, we're probably, frankly, kind of over-concentrated in downtown Crestview with our investments, but we love it down here. And we believe there's a lot of potential. And so I'm always on the hunt for another opportunity down here. And, if we do well, then the district does well. If the district does well, our city does well. And I think having a good, vibrant business district downtown is achievable for Crestview. And I think, quite frankly, it's critical to the future success of Crestview. If you let that atrophy, then your city typically doesn't do well.
Great. Nathan, thanks for your time.
I enjoyed it, Cal.